You see the अपने आप को
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. The topic which I've been assigned today has to deal with which fiqh to follow, navigating between madhabs. And this is a difficult discussion. It is a difficult topic as well. But at this point, I would say that it is a collective obligation to clarify this matter and to explain this matter, because there is a great deal of confusion. So I'll share with you my own story around the year 1998, perhaps before a lot of people here were born. Around the year 1998, I had a group of convert friends. Not many people know this. I haven't shared this with many people, but I had a group of convert friends. One of those converts went on to become one of the most famous converts in the world. You guys can look him up. It's a long story, but this was one of my friends. He became one of the most famous converts in the world, and he was on the front page of Time magazine. He was on CNN, and then I also ended up going on CNN as well. I also ended up going on the morning show with Brian Gumbel, and I also ended up on TV as well. So just the summary of the story is, around the year 1998, there was a group of us, about 4 or 5 friends. And I was the only born Muslim, the rest were all Reavens. So at that point in time, this was my first exposure, my first time having these discussions. My friends would tell me, you know what, you need to stop following a madhab. These madhabs are wrong. You need to stop following your madhab. Stop following the way of your ancestors, like the Quraysh blindly followed their ancestors, and following a madhab is wrong. Now, keep in mind, the world has changed since 1998. Number one, that was almost 25, 26 years ago. Number two, the situation of the Muslims in the Bay Area was drastically different. I would argue there were much less scholars. Today in the Bay Area, perhaps in Fremont alone, there are about 30 Islamic scholars, 30 alims, 30 scholars in just the Fremont area. In the Bay Area, you probably have maybe 60. At that point in time, in the Bay Area, I did not know scholars who spoke English, which I was more comfortable with. I did not speak Urdu, and I did not know scholars who spoke English. So my friends were on my case. They got their sheikhs, they called in their sheikhs as backup. We had a conference call, and the sheikh told me, you need to stop following the madhab. You need to stop this Hanafi stuff, the Shafi stuff. And you need to go directly to the Quran and Sunnah. Follow the Quran and Sunnah directly. There's no need to follow this madhab. This madhab is wrong. And this. So at that time, I went to a crisis of faith. I had extraterrestrial beings that bothered me. That's a story for another day. But I had a number of experiences. And finally, I put my foot down and said, because my friends are hardcore and they are trying to influence me, I need to find out more. I need to find out more in order to be able to practice my religion, in order to have some peace and not deal with this turmoil and struggle and conflict. I need to go find out the truth. And I need to investigate further and do research. So in the year 1999, after finishing university in 2.5 years, finishing my degree, I left this country and went overseas. So the reason why I mentioned this is my background with this whole topic, with this discussion. And as I said, it's not my favorite topic. In fact, I would not really recommend this topic, but I would say this topic has become a necessary evil because converts in particular are exposed to this whole debate and converts are easily confused. And before I get into the actual discussion, the advice I would give all converts and reverts is as follows. There is a methodology, there is a process and a sequence that the people before us followed. In other words, the companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they are the greatest of people after the prophets. The Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, may Allah be pleased with them. And if we look at them, they also were converts. Think about this. They were also converts. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. In fact, Ali radiallahu anhu was the youngest convert in the history of the companions. Our youngster sitting there, Ali radiallahu anhu was a young boy. But he was intelligent enough, he was smart enough, he loved the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he became the youngest convert at that time. And the companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they also went through many experiences. Many of them were kicked out by their families. Many of them were tortured. They were literally tortured for being Muslim. They were persecuted, they were harassed, they were tortured in many ways. So as converts, they also experienced many of these challenges. But they followed the formula. تعلمنا الإيمان ثم تعلمنا القرآن فازددنا به إيمانا. So their formula, they describe their formula for us. So for converts, it's very important that you prioritize. Many converts right off the bat get caught up in these debates and these arguments, online arguments, social media debates, and they get caught up in these issues. Hey, what's your aqidah? What's your aqidah? Are you the right manhaj? Or are you the wrong manhaj? This is how they talk. And as converts, before they even learn the foundation of Islam, before they even learn the foundations of Tawheed, Allah's oneness, they're caught up in these debates. And they're caught up in telling other people, brother, you're involved in bid'ah, you're involved in innovation, your aqidah is wrong, your beliefs are wrong. So that is the fear, and that is why this topic is so important, that there's a great deal of confusion, especially among the converts, regarding madhabs and regarding fiqh as a whole. There's a great deal of confusion. Go to places in America, like Philadelphia and other places, you'll find anti-madhabs, right? You'll find these groups that are completely against madhabs, and they speak ill of madhabs. And you'll find entire masjids, you'll find entire communities, you'll find entire cities and towns that where this danger is spread and where this confusion is spread. So inshallah today, the goal is that we have an introduction to this whole discussion and we come out with a better understanding of this whole process. So that is the goal. I hope, inshallah, our attendees will pay attention. And inshallah, there'll be time for questions as well. And inshallah, I will take questions this. So first of all, the starting point of this entire discussion is from the Holy Quran. To acknowledge that there will always be people of knowledge and people without knowledge. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directly commanding us in the Quran. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. This is, in fact, I would say for converts as well, and for many of us as well, this would be the golden rule. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not have knowledge. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not have knowledge. So, the way the world will work, not everyone has 3 years to study the translation of the Quran and the tafsir of the Quran from beginning to end. Not everyone has that luxury and that amount of time. All right, Quran over. And I'm just giving this as one example. In terms of, depending on the size of the pages, of course, this Quran is 600 pages. So, when we study in madrasa, it takes us 3 years and probably thousands of hours to study the translation of the Quran from beginning to end with our teachers. So we study the translation of the Quran, we study the tafsir of the Quran with our teachers from beginning to end. It takes us 3 years. Of course, not exclusively, we study other books at the same time, but right, just to give you an idea, it's spread out over 3 years, right, 600 pages. We study it with our teachers. And our teachers are there. If we make a mistake, if we don't understand something, they'll correct us. Right? So as a result, right, this is, you'd expect this of any shaykh, right? If you open up any verse, you take a page, you open up any verse of the Quran, and you ask me the translation of it, right? By default, I have to know it. Right? So open up any verse, right? I can translate in front of you. Right? Youngsters can come. You have wudu? Okay, come on. Okay, you can pick a verse, and I'll translate. Yeah, we get it. Okay. Okay. No. Okay. It's very interesting. He picks Surah Yusuf. I don't know if he did it on purpose. وَجَاءُوا عَلَى قَمِيصِهِ بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ. So I'll just give you an example. So the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam came to their father Yaqub alayhi salam. This is not mentioned, but this is a background to understand. They came with fake blood. Damin kadhib. They came with fake blood on the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salam. Right? Because they wanted to make it seem that he was eaten by a wolf. So they got some fake blood, they slaughtered a sheep, they got that blood, and they put it on the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salam, and they brought it to their father. Yaqub alayhi salam, he was prophet of Allah, he was smart. He told his sons, your souls and your desires have beautified this matter. You're doing something wrong and you're following shaitan in others. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. Then he said, I'm going to be patient and I'm going to exercise beautiful patience. وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. And I seek Allah's help from what you're saying, because you are lying. So that's a summary of it. Right? There's more explanation as well, but I'm just giving you an example. Now, the point here is not to show my knowledge, but the point here is to show that we find this division of responsibility. Some people have the time to sit and study for 7 years and study Islam in detail. Other people won't have that time, right? We have families, we have obligations, but not everyone can take out that amount of time, right? I was overseas for 7 years, right? And very interesting, these youngsters probably won't even understand. During those 7 years, the Lakers won 3 championships. And this was Kobe and Shaq, the first generation, right? We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have internet. I didn't even know who won the championship. I don't know. In fact, those 3 or 4 years, they're in a way, I lost time. I don't know who won the Super Bowl then. I don't know who won the NBA World Series, right? Those 7 years, I was in a different world. Right? And when I came back, but I found out about the Lakers. Think about this. 4 or 5 years later, I found out Kobe and Shaq won 3 championships. I never really paid attention to it. So this is the first point I wish to emphasize, that there is this division of knowledge. There are some people, the people of knowledge, and there's some people who don't. Now, what happens if we have a question or we have a fatwa? Either we can interpret things on our own. So think about this, you guys. There's a system we know, right? If I get really sick, either I can open up Dr. Google, type in my symptoms, get some medicine, and treat myself, or I can go to a doctor. Right? So these are examples to understand, right? There's a difference in the process, right? If you're Dr. Google and you're getting your prescriptions and you're getting your medicine from online, right? There's gonna be some dangers because there's side effects of medicine. There's many other things as well, but right there are 2 options. So the discussion that we're having right now, there are groups and Muslims who will tell you, you don't need the scholars. You're wasting your time. Go back to the Quran yourself. Read and interpret the Quran directly. Take Sahih Bukhari, take the books of Hadith, and understand things on your own. You don't need the scholars. They're a waste of time. That's what they tell you. But you can see the dangers there, because if you don't know Arabic, how are you going to interpret the Quran? How do you understand the Quran if you don't know Arabic? And how are you going to understand the Hadith if you don't know Arabic? So the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. This is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That some people will have that knowledge, some people will have that advanced knowledge, and some people won't. And the people who don't have that knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding them, ask the people of knowledge. Ask the people of knowledge. So let's next understand what exactly is a madhab. Right? What exactly is a madhab? Right? This is a misunderstood term. Right? I was joking around that if we wanted, we'd have sign-ups for madhab at the end of this lecture. Right? So we can sign people up and see which, if they want to join the madhab. It's a joke. No, we're not going to do it. So understand exactly what is the meaning of a madhab. So a madhab, really, the best way to describe it, it's a detailed system of the laws which every Muslim needs to live their life. It's a detailed system. Right? So if, for example, if we want to perform wudu, what is the way to perform wudu? What are the recommended practices? What are the required practices? What is the order of performing wudu? And what are the prayers to read and so on? Right? So there's a process there. So to learn that process, that is what a madhab or fiqh will teach. Right? So I joke around with people. Sheikh, what are you up to right now? I joke around, you guys. It's not a swear word. Listen closely. I say, I'm just fiqhing around. Fiqhing around. Right? Now it's a joke, you guys. It's not a swear word. Fiqhing around. Right? So fiqh means Islamic law. Right? Fiqh means Islamic law. So fiqh is a more general, it's very general. It'll include all the different madhabs, and it'll include all the different schools of thought. So another term that people use for a madhab, they call it a school of thought. That can be used as well. So it's a school of thought. Okay, so youngsters, normally I give prizes. I didn't bring any prizes with me today. So every Muslim should memorize the name of the 4 madhabs. This is useful. right? Today as well, the vast majority of the world follows a madhab. The vast majority of Muslims today follow a madhab. And throughout the last 1400 years of Islamic history, most scholars, the majority of the great scholars of Islam, Hafiz ibn Hajar, the great commentary of Bukhari, Imam Nawawi, the author of Riyadh al-Salihin, the great scholars of Islam, the vast majority of them did follow a madhab. They did follow a madhab. Right? So this, just the mainstream body of Muslims has and is following a madhab. The mainstream body of Muslims is following a madhab and has followed a madhab. So there are four famous madhabs. Initially there were more, but some of them kind of disappeared. Some of them kind of, we can describe it as they went extinct. So youngsters, we're gonna test you guys, memorize the four names of the madhabs, and I'll ask you in the end. And then if you answer correctly, you can get a prize. Right? So the four madhabs, they're named after the founders of the madhabs as well. The Hanafis, Hanifis. The Hanafis are named after Imam Abu Hanif, rahimahullah. So that's one of the madhabs. The Shafi'is are named after Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah. Then the Malikis, Malikis, are named after Imam Malik. Then lastly, the Hanbalis are named after Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. So these are the four famous madhabs, and at this point in time, these are the major madhabs that exist in the world. So how exactly do these madhabs work, right? Are they human opinion? Are they something different from Islam? What exactly are they? So the best way to describe it would be as follows. The madhabs are also based on the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet. The madhabs are taken, they're not some random invention, they are taken from the Quran. They are taken from the Quran and also from the Sunnah and the way of the Prophet Muhammad. And one way you can explain them, you can explain that a madhab is the interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah from the view of Imam Abu Hanifa and his students, or from the view of Imam Shafi rahimahullah and his students, or from the view of Imam Malik rahimahullah and his students. So it's also, you can say it's an extension of the Quran and Sunnah. It's an interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah. It is not something different from the Quran and Sunnah. It is an interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah. And also, just to make things clear, these four madhabs agree on 75% of the rulings. Right? There's no major difference between them. 75% of the rulings, 75% of the laws are exactly the same between the four madhabs. There is some minor differences, and yes, it's approximately 25%, but the vast majority of Islamic law is, there's some overlap between the four madhabs. And they agree on the vast majority of Islamic matters. As the Sheikh mentioned in the lecture earlier as well, for example, the prohibition of alcohol. All four madhabs agree, there's no difference in this regard. And just to understand this concept of madhab a little bit better, a person gave an example that, right, you have astronomers and you have people who study the stars. Right? So yes, we look for the moon. That's the most that we do. Right? You have other individuals that are looking at the rings of Saturn, for example, or the moons of Jupiter, for example. So they use these high-power telescopes to be able to see the Milky Way, to be able to see the constellations and so on. Right? They're not just looking for the moon, they're looking for the other planets and stars. So when you're looking for the planets and stars, you use a telescope. When you look at these stars, what role does a telescope play? Are you looking at the actual stars, or are you looking inside the telescope and the telescope has the pictures of the stars there? No. The telescope is a tool. Understand? The telescope is a tool. The actual objective is the stars. But the telescope allows you to, it focuses and allows you to clearly see the stars, which is your objective. So the example the scholars give is the madhabs are like telescopes, because not every person can go directly to the Quran and the Hadith and understand the Quran and the Hadith. Not every person can do it. So we sometimes need that aid, the optical aid. We sometimes need to be able to focus our lens, and we need clarification, right? And we need clarification. So that is the role that the madhabs play. And another person gave an example as well. This is, there's a few books that I recommend, inshallah, and I will mention them in the end. So to understand, right, there's the majority of the Muslim Ummah today follows a madhab, right? So if you look, most of us just by virtue of birth, right? You have India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, major parts of Iraq, they follow the Hanafi. So this is just looking at geography. Then you have portions of Egypt, Malaysia, Indonesia, and parts of Iraq as well that follow the Shafi madhab. Of course, the biggest countries in the Muslim countries in the world and the biggest populations, Malaysia and Indonesia. Yes, if you count the Muslims in India, you probably get somewhere close to there, depending on the different estimations. 1/3 of the population versus less. So either way, you have large populations of Muslims in both countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India and other countries. Then you have North Africa, you have Morocco, you have Algeria, you have Tunisia, and of course the Spanish influence that follows the Maliki method. Of course, parts of Mali as well, parts of Mauritania as well, where you have the Maliki method. So this is a rough breakdown, but the point is the majority of the world today does follow a madhab. Now the question is, most of us were born into a madhab, right? For example, if our parents were Hanafis or our parents were Shafis, generally we're going to learn from them and we're going to follow whatever madhab they follow. The challenge will come to those people who convert to Islam. The question will be, when they convert to Islam, what do? Do they follow a madhab or do they not follow a madhab? And you have these two groups. You have the followers of the madhabs, and unfortunately you have the enemies of the madhabs as well. And then you have these social media wars taking place. You have books being written. This person writes a book. Follow the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Don't follow a madhab. Who are you going to follow? Are you going to follow the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or are you going to follow Imam Hanifa? That's disingenuous, but that's what a lot of people say. So you have these debates, you have these struggles taking place, and now the converts are left wondering, what do we do? How do we deal with this confusion? What do we do? So I will give a few more examples as well. So living in the Bay Area and those visiting the Bay Area, you'll be noticing, alhamdulillah, we're getting a lot of rain in the last few days. It is a good sign. Inshallah, the drought that was here for a number of years, inshallah, we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the drought and fills up all our reservoirs, and inshallah makes it easy for all the Muslims and non-Muslims, all the people of California, that they have abundant water and rain to last for years. So we understand, living here in America, sometimes there's incorporated Hayward and unincorporated. And sometimes you have people who live kind of on the border, right? So are you part of the official city, or are you considered outside the city? So the example is, sometimes the services will be a little bit different. Sometimes even the electricity and certain PG&E requirements will be different. Are you part of the incorporated city, or are you outside the zone of the city? Are you in unincorporated city? So some people will be part of the city they'll enjoy the benefits of the city. Some people will be outside. For example, in farms, for example, the people living in the Hayward Hills, around the farms, they might be in unincorporated area. So the question is, this example, understanding the madhabs is like understanding someone who has access to the city's water and the city's water supply versus someone who digs a well in their backyard. So let's understand through that, right? So someone who's part of the city's water supply, if there's any complications, what do? Call the city's water company, right? They'll come and they'll fix it. Something happened in your one of your pipes burst, and you guys, I will say, all people of California say Alhamdulillah right now. Your pipes don't burst in the winter. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, to a great extent, our pipes do not burst in the winter. Right? We hear examples, our Muslim brothers living in Chicago, right? Your pipes freeze and burst, and your house is underwater, right? The water damage, your house is destroyed, your house is underwater. You leave for a week and you go on a vacation to Florida, you come back, your house is underwater. Right? So to a great extent, we don't have to deal with pipes bursting. But the point is, if you are part of the city's water supply and water system, then you will get that services, right? If something happens to your pipes, if something happens to your water supply, you can make a call. There's accountability. You can call and you're protected. If you go and drill your own well in your backyard and something happens to that well, what happens then? SOL. You're straight out of luck. Right? If something happens, you make your own water supply, you go and you say, okay, I don't want to deal with the city. I don't want to pay that money. I'm going to drill my own well inside of my backyard. Right? So yes, if you're going to do that, you want to rough it, that's fine, but be ready to deal with the consequences. Right? If something happens to your well caves in, that's it. Right? You're going to have to figure it out on your own. You're going to have to call in a plumber, and you're going to have to deal with the smell of the plumber. It's a joke, you guys. But you have to deal with it, and right, you'll be on your own. So that's another way of understanding the madhabs. That the madhabs represent 1,000 years of scholarship. The madhabs represent billions of scholars, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of scholars. In fact, scholars have compiled one of the greatest books written, in fact, Tabaqat al-Shafiyyat al-Kubra, written by Subki. Right? In fact, they write, the book was written to compile the names of all the great Shafi scholars of history. But there's so many, it ended up being a book on history. Tabaqat al-Shafiyyat al-Kubra, instead of a book on Tabaqat, it's really a book on Tariq, it's a book on history. So, to understand, over time, these madhabs have been refined, they have been perfected, and the madhab of Imam Hanifa is not only the work of Imam Hanifa, it's the work of thousands of scholars who have perfected the madhab, who have fine-tuned the madhab, who have added to the madhab, who made corrections, and who have provided us with the final product and a final version. Likewise, the madhab of Imam Shafi, it's not only the work of Imam Shafi, it's the work of Imam Nawawi as well. It's the work of Ibn Hajar Haytami, a great scholar in the Shafi madhab. It's the work of countless other scholars, Imam Rafi'i rahimahullah, and countless other scholars. So over the years, the research of these scholars, of thousands of scholars, is compiled into this. And let me just give you two examples. Very interesting. Let me just give you two examples. The wealth, the treasure of knowledge, and the wealth of knowledge that has gone into these madhabs. So, very interesting book. One of the most authoritative books in the Hanafi madhab is a book by the name of Mabsut, written by Imam Sarakhsi. So, about this book, right, the original book, right, was maybe 2 or 3 volumes. Imam Sarakhsi, rahimahullah, he started writing a commentary on the book. And then he got thrown in jail. Right? So the jails were a little bit different during those times. Right? They didn't have buildings like we do. They didn't have access to buildings as we do. So Imam Sarakhsi was thrown into a dry well. Think about this, you guys. He was lowered into a dry well. He can't come out because there's no access. He has to stay inside the well, and he has to live there. He has to go to the bathroom there. He has to eat there. That's his house. So he had finished half of the book. For the other half, he had a dedicated student. So Imam Sarakhsi would sit in the bottom of the well. His student would come to the top of the well and read the book to him. And he would dictate the commentary. So he doesn't have he doesn't have access to a cell phone. He doesn't have access to lights, maybe a candle or a lamp. But every day, he would sit from the bottom of the well and dictate. And his student would sit at the top. He would read the book to him, and then he'd start writing. And today, when the book is done, you can't tell the difference. Which part he wrote by hand as a commentary, and which part he dictated. Half of the book was dictated by memory and verbally dictated. Right? That's just one example. Mabsut of Sarakhsi, this is one example. I'll give you another example. There's a scholar that I have met online who lives in Pakistan. His name is Maulana Ihsan Ahmed. He is going to compile, in fact, he's done. I have pictures of it. He has compiled perhaps the biggest book in fiqh in the history of Islam. 45 volumes. Right? The name of the book is Tawal al-Anwar. 45 volumes. It took him 12 or 13 years. Like he said, I started this book off when I was young. Now I'm an old man. Right? It took him maybe 12 or 13 years. Right? He's still working on it. But when the book is published, inshallah, hopefully I'll be among the first people that gets a copy. Right? It's probably going to cost maybe $500 to $1,000. Inshallah, hopefully I'll be among the first people that gets a copy. If anyone's interested, you guys can ask. Right? It might take 1 or 2 years to publish. But think about this, 45 volumes. Right? 45 volumes. This is one volume, 45 volumes. Right? And it's a book on fiqh. It's a commentary on Durr al-Mukhtar. It's a book on fiqh. And very interesting. The original book was written by a Sindhi scholar. Those who have a connection with Pakistan. His name was Muhammad Abid Sindhi, a very great alim who was originally from Pakistan, but he moved to Madinah al-Munawwar. And he was the greatest scholar of Madinah al-Munawwar at that time. Muhammad Abid Sindhi, a very great scholar. So these are just two examples of the work, the legacy of fiqh, and the work that is done in the field. So, like the example I gave earlier, if you want to go solo, you want to go back, and you're going to interpret the Quran and Hadith on your own, right? You are bypassing 1,400 years of scholarship and the work of hundreds of thousands of scholars. If you want to leave a madhab and interpret the Quran and Hadith on your own, imagine the challenges. Imagine the challenges. So inshallah, I'll give a few examples of how madhabs work and how the differences in the madhabs work as well. So many people will tell you, make life easy. Why do you have to follow a madhab? Just open up Sahih Bukhari, whatever it says in Sahih Bukhari, just follow that, that's it. As we say, if only it was so easy. So those who understand Sahih Bukhari, right, who have studied Sahih Bukhari with the teacher, there are many examples in Sahih Bukhari where two hadith seem to go against one. In one part, Imam Bukhari will say, according to this person, your wudu breaks when you bleed. Then Imam Bukhari will say, no, your wudu does not break when you bleed. What do you do now? What are you going to do now? If you're following Sahih Bukhari, which one do you follow? It's saying wudu does break when you bleed, when blood comes out. Another narration saying wudu does not break. Which one do you follow? Now, if you're, like the example I gave you, if you're incorporated Hayward, if you're following a madhab, someone has done that research for you. Someone has already looked at the hadith has looked at the chains of narrators, has looked at all the proofs, and they've given you a final product. Ta'lim al-haq, for example. Right? These things break your wudu. Right? You don't need to go in the details. You don't need to get in the nitty-gritty. Someone is giving you a final verdict. Your wudu breaks when you bleed. That's it. Right? You follow that. That person gave you a law, right? You're following what that person has told you. If you go and interpret things on your own, you're going to have a challenge. And what the madhab does, it's a framework, it's a legal system that helps a person navigate through these difficult situations and navigate through these controversies and navigate through these differences among the scholars. So it's possible that, right, what a lot of these people will tell you, only one madhab is right. Take that one madhab and take the most correct opinion and leave anything else. Again, it was only so easy. Again, it was only so easy. Rather, even the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, the Sahaba, they also differed. Right? There's different ways to perform salat. Right? You might perform your salat next to a person. They will say, Ameen. They'll say Ameen out loud. And the person next to them, they won't say Ameen out. Because there are 15 hadith saying, say Ameen silently, and there's another 15 hadith saying, say Ameen out loud. Which one do you follow? It's possible. There are companions of the Prophet Muhammad that did both. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad that did both. Both can be right. Who said one has to be right? Both can be right. So during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, this is probably the most clear sense that why we respect all the madhabs, we respect differences of opinion, and why it's not my way or the highway. Another group can also be right as well. During the time of the Prophet Muhammad, he once commanded his companions. He said, "La yusalliyanna ahadun al-asra illa fi Bani Qurayza." This is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari as well. So there was a need to get to the houses of Bani Qurayza as quickly as possible. The Prophet Muhammad told his companions, none of you should perform asr unless you get to the neighborhood of Bani Qurayza. This is what he told his companions. Now, among his companions, there were 2 or 3 different groups. And one group said, we will take the literal meaning of what the Prophet said. So they did not perform asr. They let this asr time expire, and they got to Bani Qurayza and they performed asr. They followed the haqiqi command, the literal command of the Prophet Muhammad. Another group said no. What the Prophet intended was that we hurry him. But every salat has to be performed on its time. And right now, look at the time. The time of asr is about to expire. We're going to perform asr here, and then we're going to hurry to Banu Qurayza. So, even within the life of the Prophet Muhammad, his companions interpreted his statements differently. Finally, when all of them got to Banu Qurayza, the 2 groups, right? He asked the 2 groups. One said, we waited. We did not perform asr on the way. We got to Banu Qurayza. We performed asr there. And the second group said, no. We saw that the time was going to end. We performed our asr. Then we came to Banu Qurayza. The Prophet Muhammad heard both groups. And he respected both groups. He didn't say one group is right, one group is wrong. He acknowledged these are 2 interpretations. These are 2 ijtihad. These are 2 interpretations. And both are right in their own way. He respected both. He did not say one is correct, one is not correct. He didn't say that. This is in Sahih Bukhari, this is in Sahih Muslim as well. So there's a need for respect among followers of madhabs and the followers of different madhabs. And as I said, there's a great deal of indoctrination taking place. There's books, there's free literature. You can go and buy free literature all over. In fact, they'll hand out free groups, free books. I remember I took my convert wife to Masjid al-Haram. Right? We were in Masjid al-Haram, and just as there's the assistants and there's the security guards who are men, there are also security guards who are women as well. So we're inside the Masjid al-Haram. She wanted to talk to one of the women guards. So the woman guard said, hold on, I got something. Then she took my wife up to the thing and she said, here's all this free material. I'm thinking to myself, my wife doesn't read Arabic. Why are you giving all this material in Arabic for? Anyway, she had all this free material and she gave it to me. Right? In those days, those who remember the heydays in the early 1990s, free books were being given all over. Right? You could go, you could get large, in bulk, you could get boxes of books. Kitab al-Tawheed, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab, Kitab al-Salat, Sheikh Albani. You could get these books in bulk, and they were being distributed all over the country. So anyways, the point here is, for converts, as I mentioned in the beginning, prioritize. Right? Prioritize. Right? Make sure you get your foundations down first. Make sure you get your foundation of faith. Make sure you have a foundation of faith down before you get into these debates, before you get into these technical discussions. Try to get your foundations down first. And when it comes to this whole discussion on madhabs, look this up online, Understanding the Four Madhabs by Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad. Anyone who's looking for more information in English, it's about a 27-page book. You can get a PDF online. Understanding the Four Madhabs by Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad. It's a well-written book in English. And there's some other resources as well. But the main thing for converts, understand this is an overview of the whole madhab discussion. In fact, those who remember, we had a 10-hour conference just on madhabs. Right? Many years ago, we had a conference. It was called Salvation Through Emulation. The name was pretty catchy, Salvation Through Emulation. And the other point is understanding who the four imams are as well. Right? I don't have time to go in detail. Who was Imam Abu Hanifa? He was a great scholar of Islam. He saw the Sahaba. He met the Sahaba and he heard a hadith from the Sahaba. Imam Shafi rahimahullah was also a great scholar in his own right. Right? Those who know, I visited his grave in Qahira. Right? His great student, Sheikh al-Islam Zakaria Ansari, is in the same masjid Imam Shafi rahimahullah. His student is buried right next to him in the masjid. So Imam Shafi rahimahullah also is a very great scholar in his own right. Imam Malik rahimahullah, also a very great scholar in his own right. And Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah is also a great scholar in his own right. We could spend another 3 or 4 hours talking about who they were and their level of knowledge. So my recommendation, advice to the converts, number one, if you have any questions right now, forward your questions, either through, you can ask directly, or you can send your questions in. But this is an important topic every convert needs to understand. At some point, they're going to deal with it, because which scholars do they ask? If a convert has a question about salat or wudu or so on, who do they follow, and which school of thought do they follow? So these are important questions that will come up, and I hope in this 45 minutes, 30 minutes, at least we were able to obtain a basic understanding of this topic. So with that, any questions, Joe?
For in scenarios where one is not able to follow an opinion of one another, and he is able to, can you follow an opinion of
Yeah. So you have to word it correctly. Not being able to follow the opinion of madhab, for what reason? So what the scholars say, if there's genuine necessity, right? If there's genuine necessity, then in those situations, the muftis do look into it. And it's common throughout the madhabs, the respect is there. At times, many Shafis will follow the Hanafi madhab when it comes to kitab al-buyu, when it comes to transactional, right? Their transactional law is very difficult. So I had some friends who were studying with us. They basically follow the Hanafi transactional law and the laws of transactions because their own law is very different. Vending machines are haram according to them. Many other forms of contemporary transactions are problematic. So there are some laws and rules again, but again, the danger is if you pick and choose, if you allegedly say, I'm going to follow the strongest one, who made you the final judge to say Imam Hanifa is stronger here than Imam Shafi? You're going to follow the one that's easier. And the scholars unanimously agree. A person who picks and chooses between the madhabs, in fact, we call it the Burger King madhab, call it your way, right away. So anyone who follows the Burger King madhab, right? So they say, you know what? Today I'm just feeling a little bit lazy, so I'm not going to make wudu. I'm gonna touch my wife. I won't make wudu. They follow that. Then they go, you know what? I just had a nosebleed, and I don't want to go make wudu. I'm gonna follow the Shafi madhab today. I'm Shafi today, right? So the scholars agree. Anyone who picks and chooses between the madhabs is wrong, right? If a scholar does it, and a scholar gives a fatwa based on a situation, then it's different. So, for example, an example where the Hanafi madhab takes from the other madhabs. What had happened in India in the early 1900s, there was a challenge, Zawjat al-Mafqud. Sometimes the husband would just disappear. So we've seen it sometimes in America as well. Sometimes we've seen it in other countries. A person gets married for the visa paperwork, for example, and the moment they get their visa, they disappear. So the woman's kind of in limbo. She can't contact her husband. She can't get Islamic divorce. She can't get a legal divorce. The guy's gone. So in that situation, what do? So the original Hanafi madhab says, you wait 100 years. The woman cannot get married. She has to wait 100 years until she knows that the husband is dead, and now she can go and remarry. Now, practically speaking, a woman who is just married, she's going to live single for 100 years. Right? That's not very practical. The Hanafis take the Maliki madhab. Right? They take the Maliki madhab of 4 years. Right? But now that's based on necessity. If you tell a woman you can't get married at all, she's just going to sleep around then. Right? So there are some certain situations where one madhab does take from another madhab, but there's some conditions there as well. Any more questions from the sister side? I have no focus.